Hi, my holy home sisters. Okay, so Chaya mentioned about Adam and Chava in Gan Eden, and I want to ask you something. Why were they so happy? Why is the bracha that we give in Sheva Brachos, we should be as happy as Adam and Chava were in Gan Eden? Why were they so happy? I'll tell you why. Because there was no mother-in-law there. No, really. This idea of marriage, of two people becoming one, it's weird, by the way. Like, most of us were happy and comfortable in our homes growing up. We're self-sufficient today. Look, we don't need to get married. Like, we get married and all of a sudden everything changes, and all of a sudden there are these adjustments, and all of a sudden there's like this whole new person that we need to get used to, and a whole new life and a whole new self. And why? What's the point of all that? Because the entire point of life is making connections in three different dimensions. Making connections with Hashem, with ourselves, and with the people around us, especially with the people that we are closest with. Now, when I talk about connections, this is not some kind of weird psychobabble. No, this is science. This is biology. We are hardwired to make connections. It's an actual innate need that we have as human beings. There have been studies done where the results were that people who had the longest lives, the healthiest lives, the happiest lives, were people who had intimate connections in their lives, whether with a spouse, whether with their children, whether with close friends. We are hardwired to need deep, intimate connections. And not only do we have the need for it, but we have the ability to create it. Getting married offers an opportunity of incredible connection, incredible intimacy, in so many different areas. So in this video today, I want to talk about the importance of connection and how to connect with our husbands in 5 different areas, 5 different dimensions of intimacy. Let's first define intimacy. If we break down the word intimacy, we get into me see. Intimacy is all about looking into and seeing into the other person. You see, sometimes we erect these walls that don't allow us to see into each other and to enter into each other's worlds. When we embrace intimacy, that means we're allowing him to see inside our hearts, to see inside our minds, to see inside our souls, because the soul is where our thoughts, our will, our emotions, our intellect, our imagination, that's where it all resides. Okay, hi. I had to stop recording because I had to go to an event, and I just did a whole event, and now I came back and I'm going to finish the video right now talking about intimacy. Okay, so here's the thing. I am going to give you a very quick synopsis of this. When I do my courses, I have this course that I give, an online course called The Happy Wife Club, and we do this much more in depth, but I am going to share a flyer beneath this video. It's a Venn diagram with 3 circles. 1 circle is my world. 1 circle is my husband's world. And you see the area where there's an overlap? Okay, so that's our marriage. That's the intimacy. So let's talk about the things that go into my world. So the first thing is in the spiritual dimension, my world, my spiritual growth, my relationship with Hashem, my purpose, my mission, my adherence to halacha, my mitzvah observance, using my potential, all of those things are in my world. They're my business and my responsibility. I am in charge of that. What else is in my world? My social life, who I spend time with, my friends, my hobbies, my body, my grooming, my weight, my self-care, my beliefs about life, my perspective on the world, my ideas, my questions on things. All of those are my intellectual world. And I'm allowed to have whatever beliefs and perspectives I have. My emotions, those are mine. Whether I'm happy, whether I'm sad, my emotional well-being, that is my world and my business. What else is in my world? My occupation, my job, my career, my highest values, what I am choosing to spend my time, my money, my energy on, those are all my world. Those are personal to me. But now, here's the catch, ladies. Just like all of those things are my world and my business, well, guess what? Your husband has all of those same things in his world, which are his business. Now, this is how it works. The amount of intimacy that we're going to have in our marriage is largely dependent on how well I take care of my world. How good am I at managing my emotions, at taking care of my emotional well-being, at making myself happy, at identifying and expressing my desires and needs, at having my perspective and beliefs about things? And how well do I relate to my husband's world? Do I let go of control over his world? Do I respect his world? The level of closeness and connection in our marriage can be changed, can be enhanced, just by learning how to interact in a different way. And that's exactly what intimacy is, closeness and connection. And that occurs when two mature individuals choose to share themselves with one another. Got that? I'm my own world, and he's his own world. But we are choosing to share ourselves with each other. We are choosing to let ourselves be seen, to let ourselves be known by another person. That's intimacy. Now that always involves two pieces, transmitting and receiving. Transmitting is the act of sharing myself with my husband, and receiving is the act of receiving my husband when he shares himself with me. These are the two pieces that intimacy needs in all of the 5 dimensions. Now, of course, I can only take care of my part of things that are in my world. So when I want to increase my intimacy, I have to look at all of these areas, and I have to ask myself, how good am I at transmitting in all the different areas of my life? How good am I at letting my husband see me, see my intellectual world, see my emotional world, see my spiritual world, see my physical world, see my sexual world? Do I share that with him? How good am I at transmitting that to him? And then the other piece is, do I allow my husband to be who he is in all these different areas? And do I allow him to show it to me? Do I create enough safety in our relationship for him to be him and to let me see him? Okay, so now let's quickly go through the 5 dimensions of intimacy, and let's see how good we are at transmitting and receiving in all of these different levels of intimacy. I am going to post another flyer below so that you can rate yourselves. And I would suggest to do this together with your husbands so you can see where you're holding in each of your ability to transmit and receive in your intimacy. Okay, let's start with intellectual intimacy. That is the mutual sharing of ideas in a respectful and non-judgmental way. It means that you respect each other's thinking, whether you agree or disagree, and you are curious rather than judgmental. So look at the scale and ask yourself, how good am I at transmitting my intellectual intimacy to my husband, my perspectives, my beliefs, my ideas, my thoughts? And how good am I at receiving my husband when he shares his intellectual intimacy with me? Okay, now let's talk about emotional intimacy, and that is the expressions of your fears, joys, sadness, anger, and the receiving of each other's feelings with respect and compassion. We don't disqualify, we don't attack, we don't withdraw. This is where we talk about vulnerability. Can I let my husband see me in my emotions when I'm really sad? Can I be with him and show that to him? Do I feel safe enough to show my anger when I'm feeling angry? And by the way, there's vulnerability even in sharing our happiness about something, about our joy, and really sharing that with him. That's when it comes to transmitting emotional intimacy. What about receiving? What happens when my husband gets angry about something? If he comes home in a bad mood and he's ranting and raving about something that happened, do we say to him, okay, calm down. It's not so bad. You don't have to get so worked up. That is not receiving emotional intimacy. Your husband is having an emotional experience, and he needs us to just be there for him and to just allow it to be curious about why this triggered him in such a big way. So when we get to the point of allowing our husbands to be who they are and to have whatever emotional experience they're having without shutting it down or making it better, that is a moment of real emotional intimacy. Okay, moving on now. Physical intimacy. Physical intimacy is supporting each other's desires and preferences in the physical world. This means that one of us really cares about our physical environment, how the house looks, how the food tastes, and one of us might not care as much, or we might care in different ways. One of us might like the temperature hot, one might like it cold. One can't stand clutter, the other doesn't even notice the clutter. So whatever your desire is, whatever your preference is in the physical world, we need to be able to express that to our spouses. But not in a nagging, critical way, but really just recognizing what's true to me and letting my husband know. And of course, the same goes for the opposite as well, receiving my husband's preferences. If he likes his food cooked a certain way, even though I think it's crazy, I think it's burnt, but he likes it really well done, that's okay. I need to honor his preferences. If he likes the house in a certain order and I don't understand it, to me it's crazy, it's his preference. And I need to honor it and not attack it and not judge it. And I need to realize that just because they're not my preference doesn't mean they're not important to him. We're different people, but we are allowed to share ourselves with each other. We want to share ourselves with each other. So that's the physical world. Now let's move on to sexual intimacy. Sexual intimacy is being open to your own desires and being able to express them. Again, my world. Who am I as a sexual being? What do I like? What experiences do I like? What feelings do I enjoy? What gives me pleasure? What makes me excited? All of these things are my sexual world. What helps me get relaxed? All of that is my responsibility to know about myself, to understand about myself, and then to share with my husband. And then in terms of the opposite, being a receiver, we want to be open to our husband's desires without doing something that we might not feel comfortable doing. So this is not about the end result. It's not about, okay, so what's going to happen? This is about sharing ourselves with our spouses, sharing our inner worlds with them. So let's let our husband have his inner sexual world. His world, he has a whole bunch of desires and a whole host of things that he wants to experience. Maybe he has fantasies. Let him have those. Even if they're not practical, let him be him and know him in that way. Hi. Okay, it's the next day now. I had to stop recording again. I think this is probably the most interrupted video that has ever been recorded. All right, let's finish up. We got one more. We're up to spiritual intimacy. So spiritual intimacy is the support of each other's spiritual life, sense of purpose and meaning, and devotion to a higher power. So this means being able to ask myself, what is a spiritual experience for me? What gives me vitality and joy and purpose and meaning? And really getting to know myself in that way and being able to share that part of myself with my husband. And of course, this means that we have to give that same space to receive our husband's spiritual preferences. And this could mean that one of you might prefer a more intellectual relationship with your Yiddishkeit. Another one of you might prefer a more emotional relationship. One of you might want to go to a shul where there's beautiful singing. It might take 2 hours longer, but the singing is so powerful and it inspires you and uplifts you. And the other one might just want to daven quickly, no singing, and move on with the day. And that's how they connect. So we each have our own way of connecting spiritually. We have to ask ourselves, how do I transmit my spiritual needs to my husband? And how do I receive his sharing of his spiritual needs to me? Another example of this would be if one of the couple likes to have zmiros at the Shabbos table and the other doesn't. When I was dating somebody, I actually said no to a guy because he told me he doesn't like to sing zmiros. And for me, that was a deal breaker because I was like, no, I need that in my home. I need that warmth in my Yiddishkeit. But there are some couples who don't know that until they're married, how the other person has their relationship with Hashem, because we all connect with and relate to Hashem in our own way. So we need to be able to create safety in our relationships so that we can each share our spiritual preferences with each other and create spiritual intimacy. So that's the basic idea. In order to be a transmitter and receiver in creating intimacy in all of these 5 dimensions, it's about me saying to myself, I am going to be vulnerable with my husband. I'm going to be sharing parts of myself with him. I don't know how he's going to respond. I don't know if he's going to be supportive. I'm going to take a risk. But either way, I'll be okay, because this is me allowing my husband to see me and to get to know me. I'm going to let him know who I am. And I don't know how he's going to respond, but I am going to take ownership of my emotional world. And then the next step is receiving his world. So listen to him, to learn about him and to understand him, not to agree or disagree with him. When he's talking about something that's interesting to him, whether it's politics or cars or something going on at the yeshiva, even if it has no interest to you at all, listen to him to understand him. Even if you have a totally different perspective on it, you're listening to get to know him and to see where he's coming from and to understand him better. This is emotional intimacy. And this is how we create the deepest levels of closeness and connection. Now let's rate ourselves to see how well are we doing in these areas, in all of these 5 dimensions. And for optimal results, for tremendous growth in your relationship, ask your husband to do it too. Ask him to rate himself and to see how he's doing in being a transmitter and in being a receiver in these 5 dimensions of intimacy. Wishing you all a blessed and beautiful day.